Hello, folks. This is Paul Raggio and Lisa Raggio. We'll be starting the broadcast in 3 minutes. We're still waiting for other attendees to arrive. Hello, folks. This is Paul and Lisa Raggio. We'll start the broadcast in 1 minute. We're still waiting for other attendees to arrive. Okay, Micah, if you want to open.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for attending today's conversation hosted by Paul and Lisa Raggio in partnership with WIN Networking. I am the co-president of the Santa Clarita Valley chapter, along with Ms. Stacy Contreras, who's also on the call with us. And in the face of this COVID and shutdown, Paul and Lisa have put together a conversation designed to give us some power in our business and how we're faced with the challenges, whether if it's the slow money or the having to lay off staff or the $349 billion spent by our federal government, you didn't get your piece of the pie. In the face of whatever the challenges are, there's an opportunity to create something for a future that is bright and beautiful, because we are going to get to the other side of this. So I just want to say thank you, Paul and Lisa, for the opportunity to partner with us on this, and I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thanks, Micah. Just a couple administrative things. This is being recorded, so at the conclusion, we'll be sending emails out to those of you who registered, offering you a chance to go to the video link if you have the desire to go back and review it. Also, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see an icon to ask questions. We encourage you to ask questions during the presentation, and Micah will be fielding those. If there's enough questions on a particular slide that we're covering, then he'll stop us and pose the question, and we'll respond to it. Otherwise, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Presentation's about 45 minutes. And the other thing we encourage you to do with the question box is we always like to remind any audience that we have that You're going to be able to have some takeaways from the presentation, so that we ask that you actually type in your takeaway either during, whenever you gathered it, or at the conclusion of the presentation. It's helpful to us, and it helps you also remember some of the items that are actionable and you can take now. We've been doing these webinars for over a month now. We've learned an awful lot in how to do it. We first scripted them and found out that isn't really who Lisa and I are. And so this is, like Micah had indicated, much more conversational in tone in what we're presenting. And I'm sure some war stories are going to come out as a result of that. But we've learned a lot, just like you have, in this virtual environment. So at the conclusion of this, we would welcome any emails, texts, or anything else in terms of feedback on how we can improve delivery of these messages. We're doing this as pro bono work, and we're just doing what we can, and what our passion is to help businesses out.
Hi, it's Lisa, and I first want to thank the WIN Network for this opportunity to speak to all of you. And One True North Leadership and Business Coaching Solutions is a veteran-owned and family-operated business in Santa Clarita. And in short, our vision is to empower business owners and organizational leaders to find and live their one true north. So our intention for this webinar is to help anyone on this call find their way through this current crisis. And as Paul said, have some substantive action items you can start today that will help you and your company and your organization and or your teams start to think in terms of surviving and then thriving.
Just some quick introductions. We're leadership and certified business coaches. We were certified through Action Coach, and Action Coach is the largest business coaching services franchisor in the world. They're in over 81 countries, have over 1,000 coaches, and that just adds to a lot of the power that we bring to clients and or prospective clients, in that we have a deep bench that we can reach into to solicit advice if we need it. I myself have 26 years in the Army. I retired as a colonel. I had 3 specialties. I was in law enforcement, and then I was a comptroller, and then also a legislative liaison at the Department of Defense level. After that, I retired from the Army in 2003, and then I was hired by a large corporation to start a security company for them. I did that, and then 14 years later, I was running 8 security companies for them in some form of life cycle, whether it was in their infancy or at the end stages or in the middle stages when there was a lot of growth. I have a lot of experience in crisis management, and this, of course, is what we're operating through today.
We, like you, are small business owners. So we own One True North, and then my husband and I own a family business in the community, Patterson's Collision Center, that's been around for 18 years. So we're in this with you. In regards to degrees, Paul has his MBA with an emphasis on finance. I have my MPA, which is public administration, with an emphasis on the human dynamics of leadership. And my past experience has been to work with organizations on strategic planning, succession planning. I've been in nonprofit executive management for the last 20 years and was at Disney and Nestle prior to that under strategic planning initiatives. So I still consult with and contract with the National Firefighter Cancer Support Network and work with them. And I think with Paul's background and my background, we have been, whether in service, in military service, or first responders, we have had experience in crisis management and being thinking like a first responder, and what are the next best steps that we can take. But now our focus is on small to medium-sized business owners. Lastly, community involvement. We are big believers in servant leadership, and we're raised and heavily influenced to be giving back to the community as much as we can.
So the first part of this is just really focusing on the leadership aspect of it. And you see that symbol up in the left-hand corner of the screen. And we're going to be talking about leading, thinking, planning, and then acting, and giving you some 12 actionable steps throughout this presentation. But first, we just wanted to set the scene in what it means to step into the arena and lead. I was fortunate enough to be saddled with Dave Petraeus at the Pentagon when he was a colonel, and I had just been promoted to colonel, and then we both went down to Fort Bragg. Dave Petraeus got promoted to general, and then Stan McChrystal was down there as a colonel. And so I was blessed by being surrounded by some of the most significant leaders that the Army's produced in the last half century. And that first line is from Stan, and he's defined a crisis as a high stakes change at accelerated speed. That's what we're in now. And if you go to his website, it's the McChrystal Group. He's got some very valuable learning material that would be relevant to any business owner now. And it's practical advice on how to, for example, work or meet remotely. Lisa will talk a little bit about that later. The second item there is called VUCA times IV squared. That acronym I picked up. I went to War College in the mid-90s, and General Gordon Sullivan was the chairman or the chief of staff of the Army at the time. And the Army was still focused on fighting the Soviets in the Eastern European theater, even though it was post-Vietnam. And he made the point that we have to change our way of thinking. We're now in a very different environment that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and asymmetrical. And he was stating that that's the environment that we're going to be fighting in the future. We have to get past this. We're only going to build doctrine to fight in Eastern Europe. And so he initially was receiving some pushback from that from leaders. And they said, well, we can always hope that we're going to get through one of those smaller type engagements. And his point was, hope is not a method. And we use that an awful lot. I've used that throughout my career now. Hope is not a method. Strategizing is, planning is, leading, thinking, and acting is. And in today's environment, it's exacerbated by the amount of information volume you have and the velocity of it. So I've added to that equation the IV squared. The other point is that every soldier in basic training is taught if you stand still, you're going to be swept away or nothing good is going to happen to you. You have to move. And in this uncertain environment, it's easy to become paralyzed. And so we're going to be encouraging you to open your eyes and look for different opportunities that are going to arise while you're here. The other military axiom that I learned was adapt, improvise, and overcome. That was best accounted for in Clint Eastwood's movie Heartbreak Ridge. It's when he was playing the role of Gunny Sergeant Highway, and it was a very minor conflict of Grenada, but he used that term, adapt, improvise, and overcome, when talking to his Marines. And I've used that term, I can't tell you how many times, countlessly, even in running major businesses, that there's so much out there in this VUCA environment that you have to be willing to adapt, improvise, and overcome. And that's the way that you're going to create success for yourself in the future. And then finally, you have to lead and project confidence. Even though at times leaders may have fear in them, it's the ability to deal with fear and express your way out of it, where you're leading and projecting confidence to those who are following you. So I leave with you on this, that hope is not a method, but strategizing, planning, thinking, leading, and acting are.
We're going to walk you through the 12 steps, but before that, Paul is setting the stage. The other thing that we think is important, a part of our vision and our mission and our values, is the message of leading with empathy. And the difference between empathy and sympathy is empathy fuels connection and sympathy drives disconnection. And this is an opportunity in the midst of crisis to be able to think in terms of choosing to be a role model, because it's overwhelming, it's very hard. We are in a global crisis, and everything that everyone is feeling is actually perfectly normal. We come to the table with different life experience, history, and perspective. But we can make choices about how we're going to approach the day. And while we have to think in terms of the plan, we also need to be mindful of the day that we're in and what we need to do to maximize that day. So it's an opportunity to lead with empathy. You don't need to have a title to lead. It's an opportunity to be perspective taking, to putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Active listening, it goes with the power of now. To, in the midst of the chaos, one of the best things you can do is to get centered and to just be mindful of this moment and to think of what it is that you're listening to and not think about the other distractions that are playing in our minds, but to be actively listening. And when you do that and you make the choice to be a role model and lead with empathy, this is one of those times that you find the silver lining moments, and that's to be a culture carrier. So we have an opportunity with the WIN network, other groups that we're in, we can be the culture carriers of how people should be acting and responding. And lastly, a great thing that I've learned from the military and from first responders is I don't have to love you and I don't have to like you, but I have to have your back. And that means I've got your six. And that's a way in which we can be throughout this particular time and be leaders in how is best practice to move forward.
So the first step is positive communication, and it's just it being the first step indicates to you the level of importance of this. I've been asked several times over the years, what's the most difficult thing as a senior leader to do? And the answer is always communicate. Whether it's in crisis or not, the toughest thing to do is to communicate, whether it's verbally or your body language, the activities that you have. It becomes one of the most essential things in terms of your leadership is being able to communicate, and I'll just quote that last bullet, in a clear, direct, purposeful, and inspirational way. And that communication has to go to not only your team, but you should be projecting that communication to customers, your suppliers, your stakeholders, any of the networks that you're in, because it means that you are engaged and you're operating in the environment, and that you have a vision, and that you have a purpose, whether it be your business or your personal purpose, and you have goals, and you should be communicating those to the different stakeholders. We always encourage that you do it in terms of being optimistic, with passion and enthusiasm, and the message should be with determination that you're going to survive for sure, and that you're going to strive at the conclusion of this, and we're going to talk about the phasing of this in a minute. It's also important that you remain engaged in the community. I'll give you an example. I'm a member of the Rotary, and the Rotary chapter here in Santa Clarita Valley is now doing Zoom meetings. And I can't tell you how important that is to stay connected in that community. Just like this WIN network, and that you've decided to start doing virtual meetings. Again, can't tell you how important that is, because it really does offer a way to be included, especially when we're being told to socially isolate. Just to review that last line again, the clear, direct, purposeful, and inspirational. The clarity in message becomes very important, whether you do it in verbal, email, if you're on Zoom and you're having a virtual meeting, people can still see your body language and they take measurements off of that. They want you to be direct. If you don't know something, say you don't know it. Don't make stuff up, especially in times of crisis. That's when you should be doing all you can to do the research and maybe the analytics. You always have to provide a purpose, even when you're talking to your folks virtually. Your purposefulness gives them meaning of what they're doing and why they're doing it now. And then finally, leadership and versus management. Leadership means that you're inspiring people to actually achieve goals that they otherwise thought they wouldn't be able to. Management is managing resources, which people are a part of that. They're two very different things. So in your communication, you should be really emphasizing the social media aspect, email. I know phone is kind of old fashioned, but whether you text or phone somebody and just check in with them to make sure that you're doing that. And then Lisa will also be covering how to handle virtual meetings, and that's another whole different learning skill for you. The second hardest thing I would say is getting the most from your people. And especially now, and when you're operating in a virtual environment, you have to be able to set new standards and then have an expectation that those standards are going to be met. It may be as simple as we're going to have a morning huddle, a morning virtual huddle if you have employees, or even if you've had employees that you've had to furlough, that you still establish some type of communication with them, which means that you establish standards for either work productivity or just checking in to see how either their day's going or what they see or envision moving forward. That helps them get their mindset right, and it helps them turn whatever fear they may have into focus on something. So you go back to the vision that you've established or the purposefulness for them, but that's what you want to be doing. This is a great opportunity to train. We talked to a customer the other day and just talked about the value that you're seeing in the virtual environment. How many, just like this webinar, how many webinars are being offered for free? In fact, sometimes it can be overwhelming, and you have to look at taking a very selective method about what you're going to attend or not attend. But you should be training, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. I've had senior executives before tell me that they're already up to speed. They don't need to learn anymore. And I corrected them immediately, saying, no, there's always an opportunity for you to train and learn, not only for yourself as a business owner, but it's a great opportunity for you to induce that training that you had parked so many different times over the course of the last year to help your employees or your organizations grow. And it's going to pay huge dividends when you have the opportunity to reestablish your business. And then finally, in terms of teamwork, keeping as many as you can becomes important. Now, we're a month into this. We all have been watching the PPP program and either the availability of funds or the lack of disbursement of loans at this point in time. I'm confident they're going to be coming. And I know that many of you are still living day by day and have had to furlough employees in the past, but that doesn't mean that you still can't reach out to them and keep them in touch, especially if your intention is to bring them back on board again once you open your business. So the human capital is a critical element here, and your ability to maintain the teamship becomes essential.
So step 3 in thinking your way forward. This is a diagram that we found on LinkedIn, and we have since added it to our COVID-19 resource page on our website. And our website is onetruenorthcoach.com. But we find this to be extremely value added for a few reasons. Number one, it starts with the question of who do I want to be at this time during COVID? How do I want to be remembered through this time? And I want to just start by saying anywhere that you are at on this particular diagram is okay. That is where you're at. but it's an opportunity to think of what you could develop and what you could be thinking about and how you could grow. So it's an opportunity to give yourself permission to think in terms of progress over perfection. And I know that can be hard for a lot of us who have counted on our perfectionism to execute. But this really is a time in which we can develop this muscle. I have this in our kitchen in our home because that's the most frequented place. And it's an opportunity for us to walk in and out and see and talk about at dinner. Where are we at today? Where do we think we could grow into? We also have been telling our business owner clients and organizational leaders, use this in your meetings. Use this as something to start the meetings and ask your team, where are you at today? When you're growing into another area, if you're going from the fear zone thought to the learning zone, what helped you get there? Share those things and keep communicating. There's things that you can be doing to develop muscles, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But this is something we found to be very value added for what you can do to yourself, to your family, and to your work family as well.
So step 4 is to think in phases, and I'll share a story with you here. It's my first assignment at Fort Bragg, and 18th Airborne Corps is a contingency corps of all services. If you don't know it, but units out of the 18th Airborne Corps, whether it's the 82nd Airborne Division or the unit I commanded, the 16th NP Brigade, we're always the first to deploy on a contingency. And so my first assignment there, we had just come back from St. Croix. And St. Croix, we were doing hurricane relief operations. Our mission was to collect up about 350 prisoners that were, because of the hurricane, had escaped, and then help with the relief operations itself. And we had just returned, and then we started planning, and I was the chief planner for law enforcement there. We started planning for operations going into Panama to take down Manuel Noriega and bring him back to the States. And I had gone to a school previously for 4 months on military decision-making and campaign planning. And, one of the things that I thought of when I was first there is what a mammoth undertaking and responsibility I had in my shop to put together the law enforcement annex for the 18th Airborne Corps plan going into Panama. And then I saw that, okay, you take one bite at a time. And in planning, you're taught to break things out into phases. So we're in phase 1 right now. C stands for coronavirus or COVID, however you'd like it. D is the day that it started, and we started to measure it as a nation, and then even more so in California. So I'm calling phase 1 C day through 60 days. So that's going to put us into May sometime. You're in it now, and except for essential workers, you're under a stay-at-home order and you're working virtually. So you should be establishing milestones during this phase of things that you want to complete as a business owner. This helps you focus. What do I have to do during phase 1 of this? Phase 2 is going to be day 60 through likely another 60 days at least, and that's transitioning to a new normal. You're going to see slowly businesses reopening. There's going to be safety protocols in place. You'll have to do a number of planning things during that time period, but it won't be back to full operations. It's going to be a transition period, and it's going to take some time to get through. That will be phase 2. This is how I see it. And there will be certain milestones you'll want to achieve during phase 2. Phase 3 is really 120 days to likely 270 days. And that is you're going to be operating in a new environment until a vaccine is in place. And so people will still be hesitant to go into restaurants like they did before, or movie theaters or gyms. And then even your own employees may be hesitant to come back to work if it's at full scale. So that's phase 3, and likely that's going to be out 270 days. And then phase 4 is what I'm terming post-pandemic operations. It's when we'll have a vaccine in place and where people will start to normalize. But during each of these phases, you're establishing new normals, new rituals, new ways of doing business that will likely carry all the way through and into phase 4. Some of it, you're going to find that it's more efficient. And those are things that you should be leveraging through the phases until you get to phase 4. But this is the first part of your thinking phase and or way of thinking and how you can help focus your business to survive through phase 1, start to reopen in phase 2, looking at phase 3 and how that's going to grow and develop, and then finally getting into phase 4.
So with that comes building a strong mindset and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves and putting the oxygen mask on first. And for some of us, we've been operating as business owners and organizational leaders. We're spending at least probably 80% of our time in operations. And we're used to putting a whole bunch of things first. Now is not the time to do that. Now is the time to build new habits. So if you weren't operating that way before, now is the time to be establishing daily rituals in which you incorporate self-care. It's really important. We talk about this a lot. This is an endurance event. This is a marathon. And we are maybe at most at mile 5 or 6. And you have to be thinking about pacing yourself. We posted recently articles on our website on COVID-19 resource page that we're dealing with focus, because we've heard a lot from our clients about how do I get focused at this time? And one of the ways you do that is to maintain the schedules and the rituals that you had before. So even if you're working from home or you're discombobulated, you're still figuring out what time you get up. That may be that you still take a shower at the same time, you're getting dressed, you're going into your other office room, you're creating a space that is just work driven so that you can go to other parts of your home and feel not overwhelmed. It's an opportunity for learning and growing for sure, because as Paul said, there's so many free resources now. And the self-care does come in where, you have to engage, and the brain is a muscle. And we know that if we overtax a muscle, then it stops working well. So you need to give it the space and time to also build that muscle. It's a crisis for sure that we're in, and it's an opportunity. So it's an opportunity for how you're going to approach each day and how you're going to own that day. And part of that is finding the small wins. Instead of thinking in big terms of waiting for a major win to happen, it's the little things that you can tell yourself that you're doing well every single day, as well as your team if you have a team. What are they doing right? Catch them being good. Catch yourself being good. And honor that particular moment, because in times of crisis, those little things matter. Sometimes no news is good news, for sure. Get your information and your dose to be a responsible citizen, but then it's time to turn off the news, because we know from research that adds to our depression, that adds to our anxiety, and we don't need to have it on or to be listening to it. We've got enough in just being informed at the top of the morning or the end of the day. And resiliency, believe it or not, every single one of us is building our resiliency muscle right now. So it's how we're going to use this time in the future to serve the greater good for ourselves and our personal vision and mission, as well as our organizations going forward. So remember to continue to think outside the box and build a strong mindset. With that, now is a time in which we can really devote to discovering or rediscovering our why. And Paul and I use this particular diagram. We created this, and it's heavily influenced by, we're believers in Simon Sinek and his philosophy that people buy either your products or services. They buy not what you have or how you do it, but why and who you are. And if you haven't figured this out yet, I cannot think of a better time to think of it. First, you have to have your mindset pointed in the right direction. But there's plenty of things out there you can start to do now to figure out what your why is. And this is going to help you personally and professionally. You could start with why. Literally, the name of the book by Simon Sinek is Start with Why. There's also another book called Find Your Why. But first, you find your purpose. And then you can establish your points of culture, which are basically the rules of the game. And that all connects you to your be times do equals have. So think of where you want to be, what it is that you want to be doing in life post-COVID. Think of the bird's eye view now. And who do you want to be? And what knowledge and skills do you need to acquire now to get there? Not only the knowledge and skills, but what are the beliefs? What are the attitudes? What are the commitments that you need to be thinking about that are going to get you to that next place in a long-term vision? These answers give you the knowledge and understanding to do the things that would allow you to attain your goals. And then this is when, if you don't have one either, and we talk to a lot of business owners, again, you're operation centric, right? You've been in overdrive in operations. Who's had the time to think about their vision and their mission? And if you have a vision and a mission, have you put that into a statement? And have you leveraged that statement on your website, in your company materials? Because those things matter and they're game changers. And once you've established all of that, then you can build your house in the right way for long-standing and sustainability and lay out your goals and objectives. So this is a time, believe it or not, even though it may be hard from a mental health point of view, to be dreaming and thinking about life in the future post-COVID.
So step 7 is taking what Lisa said and then looking at how do I do this in phases. So we had the discussion on phases, and certainly right now, most businesses that we know of are in the survive mode. But there's plenty of businesses that are actually achieving things that they don't have the capacity to perform. So if you're in a cleaning business, for example, you may be finding yourself that you have so much in terms of future activity that you don't know how to keep up with it. Or you may be a marketeer or a web designer, and you're seeing many people investing in looking at their websites and sprucing them up or updating them. So you too may have a lot of business that you aren't certain how you're going to handle. So we encourage you to look at each phase, and during phase 1, you establish milestones, and that phase 1, remember, I'm saying will probably last through May, and then you establish milestones for your business and yourself on things that you want to achieve during that phase. Part of that phase is that you have to plan for phase 2. And the plan for phase 2 is how are you going to gradually open? Meaning, if you have a brick and mortar place, how are you going to clean it? How are you going to bring your employees back? Are you still going to allow some to work remotely? Will you encourage all of them to come in? And then, of course, we're going to have to respond to whatever safety protocols are imposed by the county or the state. But think through how are you going to do that? Once you get to phase 2, you need to start looking at how do I plan for phase 3. Phase 3 is going to be longer in duration, and that phase 3 is going to be how do I operate under a new normal but without a vaccine. So people are still going to be looking at a number of safety protocols, and how do you manage that? Restaurant owners, for example, how are you going to do that in terms of, let's just take a simple item like a menu. Are you going to offer a menu for your patrons, or are you going to do it without a menu and maybe do something innovative or different and put the menu on something that doesn't require them to touch? How are you going to make sure that they have some level of confidence that cleaning's being done? You're going to want to remain open. And you may have had a restaurant in the past where you didn't accept reservations, and maybe now you need to accept reservations. So these are things that you should be thinking of during each one of these phases, but establishing milestones for you to achieve while you're in them. And then finally, in phase 3, you can start planning for phase 4, and that's operating in post-pandemic a vaccine's in place, and then really reflecting upon the other 3 phases that you've been through, because there are going to be some business practices that you've established during each one of those phases that you're going to carry on in phase 4, because now it just makes sense and it may be more efficient and practical for you to operate your business that way. But all during these phases, you're going to see some opportunities that you should be leveraging when you're in them. So this is a way that you can map your way of thinking, and you break it down into bite-sized chunks and you plan in phases.
So maximizing your conditions. This is a time in which we can feel very restricted because there's a lot of can'ts. And we would encourage you to think about, how can I reapproach and look at this so that I can find a can in this particular moment, whether it's your thinking or your planning or what you're thinking forward into regarding during and post-COVID. But it's an opportunity to approach this as a pilgrim versus a tourist. And we all know that if we were a tourist in a particularly new land, we would be doing things more from a passive point of view. But if you're a pilgrim and you're in a new land, you're looking at things from a discovery point of view. And when your mind is focused on that, you probably will be creating a unique selling proposition out of this. Something to remember as well, historically speaking, these are the times in which our innovation peaks. So it's out there, it's just a way in which we can approach it and leverage and maximize it. The one thing I'll say about this particular slide too is the desire, we have a formula, D times V plus F is greater than R. And that means that at any given moment, your desire times your vision, and then taking the first steps has to be greater than resistance. The truth of the matter is most of us stay in the resistance side as business owners and organizational leaders because the other things aren't great enough to move forward. But times like these force us to adapt and change. And even though it feels really hard, in the long run, there are wins that can come out of that. So this is to remind you to be thinking in terms of how you can maximize your conditions. And a reminder also that your leadership is essential, and not only to yourself, but to your family, friends, neighbors, community, and your team around you as well. Virtual is the new normal. You guys are all feeling it. I know I'm feeling it. I know I resisted it for a long time. And gone are the days that I can even think about resisting it. So technology, Paul mentioned this early on. We came upon the McChrystal group on LinkedIn was putting out a lot of ads in regards to what they were offering for free in webinars, in best practice remote communications. And we found it to be extremely helpful. And if you go to the McChrystal group and you look at the practical guide to remote communications, it really lays out a structure of best practices, of remote decision-making, of remote client and sales management, of the culture shift. So we highly recommend that. Human management, now is a time if you have a team to definitely be thinking in terms of SOPs. You may not have ever established standard operating procedures before, but now's the time to take on what you can be doing during COVID for SOPs, and then what it is moving forward that you can take the time to flesh out what the standard operating procedures will be in phases 2, 3, and 4. It's also a time because of social distancing that you may have people feeling very alone and disconnected. And I can't stress this enough. I was 10 years a director of a mental health foundation, and I really benefited from working with psychologists and some of the best. And it's really important that we take care of our mental health. And I think as an organizational leader or business owner, we have a responsibility to look at our people from a holistic or integrative point of view. That means as the whole person. So you're going to see on our COVID-19 resource page, we have created an area that's specific to mental health and accessing the things that you can be utilizing for yourself, as well as sharing with your family, friends, your work teams, and taking it seriously, because those things really matter, especially now. Meetings, we encourage you not to forgo them, but to create, again, a system in which you are checking in with your team members on a regular basis. If you're a sole proprietor, you may also want to think about then, who are your vendors? Who are your suppliers? Who are your networks? Who are the people that you were used to doing some kind of business on a regular basis with, and move that into a meeting form that you're checking in with each other. And do not forgo reporting and planning. I think we've probably all been in the flight, fright, freeze moment for the last several weeks. Now is when we are adjusting. Human nature is, and biology says, okay, we start to grow into adapting to a new environment. So now we can start to think about reestablishing if we weren't before. We've got to get back to the reporting and the planning and scheduling it in your calendar with yourself or your team on a regular basis. Leverage and maximize the calendars that you have to book these times of what it is that you're going to incrementalize and pay attention to, because it's going to help you now and in the long run.
So cash is king, and it's something that you should be preserving as much as you can right now. And maybe I don't even need to state that. We've been into this for a month, but one of the things I would encourage you to do is to take advantage of any and all of the government programs. It's even though some of them have stalled right now, and we're waiting for the next infusion of cash into the PPP program, be assured that Congress is going to legislate something, and so you're just going to have to be patient and stay with it. But you still have the SBA, the EIDL loan that you can apply for. There's several grants within LA County and the state of California that you could be exploring. The point is that this gives you future leverage and provides you cash, and cash becomes very important in surviving. So I certainly encourage you to take advantage in any of those. This is also a great opportunity for you to drill down into your own cost structure and look at how cash has flowed in the past. And then you can also apply this to the 4 phases that I talked about earlier. What is your cash flow or cost structure going to look like in each one of those phases? How are you going to budget when you go into 2021? And then looking at how are you going to forecast for 2022 once you get to that point. These are all things you can be thinking of now, but truly evaluating. When we talk to clients, so often they don't pay enough attention to their cash or to their P&L statements or their chart of accounts. These are all things that you could be doing, and then looking at how to make your business better, and also applying key performance indicators associated with that. Whether you're a small business or a large business, you should be having key performance indicators on your dashboard, measuring your business and your cash flow throughout its life. It's a way of doing business, and it's a best practice that you do that. Certainly, you should be slowing your business cycle down and postponing any major activities until you get greater clarity on what these phases are going to look like. And then one other thing that we strongly encourage you to do, and we've had some customers or clients who are reticent about doing this, is you should be selling. If you can sell, you should be selling. And we know that there's a hesitancy that some people may say, well, I don't have money to buy right now. It doesn't mean that you can't provide value. And we encourage you to do that, even if it's at a discounted price, but we encourage you to stay engaged in the market. If you believe you have something of value that's going to help others, then you should be selling it.
All right, we're approaching the end, and this is a really critical point that I know we may be limited in our sales, but marketing, you should be marketing now. But when you do market and your marketing shifts, you need to make sure that you're responsibly marketing. So first, your message has to be by design, not default. You need to be thinking in terms of being emotionally intelligent, being socially responsible, and getting messages out there. relationships matter. And this is a time that we can heavily influence who we are to other people that have been our clients and our customers in the past. We're looking at this time as really being service over sales, education over sales. So now's a moment in which, you can be leveraging what it is that you've done in the past and looking at it from a different lens. So if you're somebody who, let's say, was selling toothbrushes, it's not about promoting selling toothbrushes. It's about teaching people on why they need to be brushing their teeth and why that's important. If you were talking about being a car salesman, you would talk about why it's important to keep your car running. If you were selling beds, you would talk about the nature of why it's important to have good support in your bed. So there's definitely different ways you can be looking at this moment for how you can be shifting your marketing. The other thing is you need to be updating your website. It needs to be current. It needs to be COVID centric or COVID sensitive. There needs to be a call to action on your website. You need to be stepping up your content. You need to be refreshing and reviving your social media. How can you be current and reflecting? And sometimes just to check in on people, Paul said this at the very beginning in slide 1, positive communications. I can't tell you the value of calling clients, customers, vendors, networks. I've called so many people recently and only to say, how are you doing? We're just checking in. And that's the only reason I've done the call. And they've been so appreciative because they thought we're work relationship. And I've said, no, I care about you first. So how are you doing? That really makes a difference during this time. And that goes to ready to serve much, much more than before. And lastly, knowing your numbers better than ever. Now is the time when it comes to planning and thinking strategically, really mastering what it is that you need to know in regards to leveraging and maximizing your marketing. So take some time and learn, because there's an abundance of learning out there, or call Paul and I because we can help you out with this area. But spend time on looking at the amount of dollars that you have put into a marketing campaign in the past, whether it's direct mail or social media or print. How many leads did that generate? How many of those leads converted into a customer? What was the average dollar sale? Now is the time to be thinking in those terms and breaking it down and really mastering the knowledge of your numbers. Don't underplay your value.
Okay, to summarize what we've covered in the other.
Paul, real quick,
Yes.
we had a question came in from Amber Stevens. I thought you can take just a quick moment to speak to. And she's asked if you could speak to the value of live video on social media.
We just got off a webinar with our founder, Brad Sugars, and he is an absolute advocate of it. I'll let Lisa talk to that.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for us to grow too. We haven't done that in the past, and now we set that as a goal that we start to do that in May. And doing 1 to 2 30-second to 1-minute video a day. And our franchisor just said this morning when we were in the call, I don't care if you're uncomfortable with it, get over it, start to do it. Just talk to people about one thing. Your aim is to connect. That's really what it comes down to, is connecting to your audience and making sure that your audience believes that they are a lifetime customer, not just for the past when there was a sale or a couple sales, but they want to be with you for life. So you absolutely can be doing that. And I'll tell you what, there's a whole bunch of information for free on the internet now about how to do a video, the best way to do it. Sometimes you just literally pull out your phone and start to speak to the video and act like it's a real person on the other end and give them one thing they can walk away with that they can connect with.
Yeah, I'll just say from a generational standpoint, well, here's an indication. I opened up a Facebook account maybe 3 months ago, and we opened up our first Instagram account 2 weeks ago. So we truly understand the importance of it. Even as business coaches, we're now encouraging. We had a client the other day, we encouraged him to pull up old videos that he had and repurpose it and put it on his website. So thanks to the question, I mean, we can't tell you how important it is to do that on your different platforms and to get out front. This last step is really a summary slide, and it comes from Stan McChrystal again and the McChrystal group, but I thought it was a great visual to show how you can lead, think, plan, and act and put it into motion. So we talked an awful lot about early on, define the current reality. Where are you today? And think through that. How is that impacting you today? Look at it in terms of, I recommend phase fours or 4 phases. You may have more phases, you may have less phases, but those 4 phases makes the most sense to me right now, and me understanding what the current reality is. Then you develop a prioritized plan, and that prioritized plan is going to be phased. You don't have as much clarity on what's going to happen in 2021 as you do maybe what will be over the course of the next 30 days. But you still need to develop the plan. You still need to do the strategizing. And it takes you back to that opening slide that we presented, that hope is not a method. And it's not. You have to do the hard work to get through it. The creating simple rules is really how you get through each day, whether it's on a personal basis or a business basis. So for example, a simple rule on a personal basis is I'm going to wake up at 6:30 every morning and I'm going to do my daily ritual. On a business basis, it may mean that I'm going to hold a virtual huddle with the employees that I have, whether furloughed or not, and that's going to take place at 8:30 every day. I'm going to have an agenda. We're going to walk through what the current conditions are, and then I'm going to reinforce my vision, my purpose statements, and the direction that I see going forward as a leader of this organization. Then you move to cultivate the 360 communication. We can't tell you how important this is, especially in the virtual environment. You may have people who just are on the line and remain silent. You have to be able to bring them out. And there's some tools that you can use to do that. We use what's called a WIFL. What do I feel like expressing? Some of you who've been in our workshops, I know Mike has been through this. Everyone in the room has to participate, and they have to state, what do I feel like expressing? It could be top of mind, but it's a way that you get out in the open and you get people engaged, and it's a safe place. So that's cultivating 360 communication. And then especially in the virtual environment, you have to empower your people. You expect them to execute, you empower them to do that, and then you follow up as a leader would do. That's leading through a crisis, and that's how you assess, align yourself, and then finally act through it. And then what we're encouraging you to do is to lead, think, plan, and act, and this is how you set it into motion.
And just lastly, Micah, before we go into final and Q&A, just a reminder that that COVID-19 resource page, that's a page we've put together on our website, onetruenorthcoach.com, that we've actually engaged with and interacted with. So, you know, we have applied for the loans, we have gone through the webinars with the SBDC. There's an abundance of information on there in regards to the loans, the grants, planning, mental health, focus, as well as leadership. All of those things that people would find on there, we have found to be value added in our particular business and what we're doing with our clients. So we share it with you there. The other thing is on May 1st, we are going to have a 90-day business planning workshop. And in the past, this has been something that's usually been about a 7-hour day in which that client walks away with a workbook that they can start to use immediately to lay out their next 90 days with objectives and goals that have been smartified, specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-framed. And we're going to be doing this with heavily thinking upon what's going on with COVID and combining the phases that Paul laid out in regards to being COVID-centric during our 90 days. So we hope that all of you can attend that. That will be on May 1st, and we're going to be sending a follow-up with an invitation and a link. And we just want to leave you with the message that, you know, be mindful of taking stock of what us as Californians and San Fernando, San Gabriel Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, with our earthquakes, with our fires, and Saugus, with being Saugus strong, We are a community that shines when faced with adversity, and we've developed a lot of muscle in being prepared. So this is a time to think outside the box and plan, and keep your head up. Choose to be a role model for those you love and lead, and have faith. And thank you all.
And Micah, are there any questions that we can respond to?
There are currently no questions, but if anybody does have a question, please submit it through the question box, and I will recreate it for you.
Or you can email us, and also we would really encourage you to put what was your greatest value of this presentation into the question box, and we can review some of those too.
So I think Yvonne has a comment. She said, excellent. Her takeaway is who I want to be during COVID-19 slide. I'm not understanding the question.
I think it may be that's the greatest value. That
Yeah.
That's a pretty impactful slide that we have. Okay. Okay, folks. Well, this we will provide a follow-up email to all of you who registered, and in that follow-up email will be a link to the slide, and we'll have a couple other resources that we want to provide to you in terms of communication and things that would be beneficial to you. And so, Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. So just a couple of quick announcements, and then I guess we can adjourn. So Win Santa Clarita is hosting a Zoom meeting next week on Wednesday, April 22nd from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. And we do have our speaker who was scheduled to speak at our live event last month. We've brought him onto the Zoom call next week. And basically, to his little blurb here is learn the techniques to accomplish your goals both in life and business through the experiences of former LAPD Gang Task Force Officer Robbie Robinson. He will show you how to set your path, chart your course, and stay disciplined and focused on your goals. And the mindset is imperative. And I just want to note that this was put together, and we asked him to do this, gosh, back in like January. COVID was like really not on our radar. So the fact that we have him coming to inspire us during challenges is really inspirational. And then we have one other meeting coming up this month. That'll be the Mid-City LA meeting. That'll be on Tuesday, April 28th from 11:30 to 1:30. And they have Deborah Durr, who's a certified financial planner, will be offering her expertise in proper financial planning and its importance in the challenging of COVID-19 times. And both of those, you can find more information at win-networking.com. And those are the announcements that I have. And so, Paul, I'm going to leave you to say your final farewells. And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being on here today. And I'm going to give it back to you, Paul and Lisa.
Thanks, Micah, and thanks, Micah, for facilitating that. That was really helpful. Hey, folks,
Thank you.
we just encourage you. We really do value your feedback. So if you have feedback, we ask that you either send us an email or send us a text, and we would truly appreciate it. And then finally, as Lisa had mentioned, we're offering a pro bono strategy session for any of you. And I strongly encourage you to take advantage of it. We would do it virtually, but we did one the other day. It lasted about 2 hours, and at least the person we were talking to indicated that they got a lot of value out of it. So if you want to do that, just contact us again, either email or text, and just get on our schedule, and we'll be glad to do that.
Thank you so much.
Paul, real quick before we go, we did have one question that just came in from Renee, and let me go ahead and read this to you. I think this is for you, Lisa. I believe Lisa said that there was a specific how-to or tutorial that you all used for conducting virtual business. What was that? ?
Yes, it was the remote communications. It's a practical guide to remote communications by the McChrystal Group, and that's McChrystal. If you go to the McChrystal Group website, you'll see it there. And I should be posting it to our COVID-19 resource page this week. But if you just get onto the McChrystal Group newsletter, you're going to see the catalog of free webinars that have been offered that they're great. They're so value added. And that remote communications plan is a practical guide that really simplifies laying out best practice for setting up your remote communications. If you can't find it, please text me or send me an email and I'll send it to you directly.
All right, cool. And Renee also just want to say that her takeaway is stay engaged. And I second that, stay engaged.
Yeah, we agree. Thank you so much for this opportunity, all of you. We wish you well. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. And you all stay healthy too.
All right, take
Bye-bye.
care.